Alright, so why I think I'm an INTJ. Well, although I am not the most visual thinker, as I keep hearing about, I do think visually, although my thoughts are also auditory. I am not sure how one would really function, apart like maybe in the movie The Replicant or something, if they didn't think in terms of words. I mean, animals apparently don't think in terms of words either. They have concepts and they express their emotions mostly. Some of them do learn words. But anyway, yeah, I know I have the SE grip, extroverted sensing, fourth function grip mode for stress, and by function pairs, and I would have to be the first function. And I don't care about social harmony as much as authenticity and morality. So that means FI is higher in the function stack than FE, and function pair wise that goes with TE, extroverted thinking. So that pretty much makes the INTJ, because each of the functions has to go introvert, extrovert, or if it starts extrovert, then the other way. So NI first, then T, then etc. Which is the MBTI shorthand code for, the first letter is what is the primary function's focus, and for NI it's introverted, so I, and it is the perceiving type introverted intuition, which is N, and the most extroverted type is extroverted thinking, which is T, and it's the judging type, J. So there you go. Yeah. Also, well, possibly also due to having Asperger's syndrome, which I do have a formal diagnosis of, that conveys social awkwardness, and maybe that goes along with if I have FI as the third function, then FE is the seventh function, which is the blind spot function. So that would go with that. And yeah, I do tend to be either very trusting or kind of paranoid, which goes with NE being the fifth function, the nemesis function, which is the source of worries. So yeah, that's, C.S. Joseph has that video on Vice and Virtues of INTJs, and I really relate to that, unfortunately, somewhat. But everyone has their own problems and their own strengths, though, too. So, yeah, and I do tend to get trapped in the past sometimes, which is SI, although if NI is the first, that goes with SI being eighth, because SE is the fourth, and the shadow function, or the id or unconscious stack, is the same order of types of functions, but with reverse foci, with focuses. Yeah. But it's, extrovert and introvert are switched over. So for an INTJ, they have an ENTP id. So that's NE, extroverted intuition, introverted thinking, FE, SI. And that's how that goes. But SI, SI demon, SI eighth, whatever, it's either overused or underused. And for INTJs, it means being trapped in the past and having been physically abused by my stepdad, like the first 3 years after my dad died, and my mom found him 3 months later. That kind of is a traumatic event that, while my dad dying is more traumatic, the rest just blurs into a general form of being thrown around and yelled at and being forced to make eye contact and repeat the orders back verbatim and all that fun. Yes, so that was the craziness of being trapped in memories. But it's, I do have a memory for remembering numbers, but I have to associate them. I have to think, what does this relate to, that kind of thing. I don't remember names so well, not as well, but numbers are easier to remember because I associate them with birth dates or whatever, and that works out a fair bit for, like, memory is by association within the brain anyway. But for most memories, they are just relegated into being patterns and not into being, like, some people have a photographic memory. I can remember some things vividly, but not most things. But yeah, that's how that goes. That's the TI critic. Yeah, my intelligence is only above average, which is going along with Asperger's, which is autism plus above average intelligence. Not genius, and I don't feel smart in the least, and there are plenty of people smarter than me. My stepdad had me go through 3 different psychologists and neurologists to see if he could find anything to make me aware of the court to get me out of his home faster. Although, I don't know what his purpose was. He was getting all the Social Security checks from my dad's death. The survivor's benefits. We had to, my sister Beth and I had to pay our rent checks to him. Or, well, not rent. They were as survivor's benefits, but he had us pay rent, and the joys of that. That was... Yeah, but still getting thrown out of the house every time he decided to find an excuse to scream at me so I could cool off. Yeah. Oh, that's annoying. Yeah. But anyway, I think I'm going to make videos of the cognitive functions, but I suppose it's already been done plenty though. I could just say some things at the end here instead. NI is mostly inductive, and it has a visual component. It thinks in terms of being step by step, what will happen after this kind of thing. NE is brainstorming, very creative, and it's a linking function between patterns. Generating patterns to a degree too. So and SE, external extroverted sensing, is focusing on the senses. It's how things work and the present moment, and stuff like that sort. How things physically operate and how you feel about them at the moment. SI is how you remember things. Not necessarily like having a long-term memory, but it goes along with it. Probably because people with high SI value the past and place high associations on it. But if they have some sort of issue, then that limits their brain's functions, like a stroke or whatever. They lose some of their memories even though they value them. Let's see, to judging functions. FI, I already mentioned, cares about individualism and being authentic and focusing on one's morals, and it's standing out of the crowd rather than caring so much what the crowd thinks. People with high FI, though, for the first function, would have FE, nemesis, which means that's their source of worries about not being harmonious enough. And if they have it as their second function, that would be their critic function, which makes them critical of, well, both themselves and not being harmonious enough, also not as worries, but as like, well, maybe somewhat, but also of not liking groupthink either so much. And yeah, FE third is a blind spot already, and I guess FI demon would be either focusing on individualism too much at times or being completely oblivious to it, but not in the same way as the blind spot, I think, because the blind spot you still maybe think you do care, but you are just blind. I don't know. There's a lot that I don't know, so I'm sorry if I say anything wrong. I'm sure I'll hear about it if anyone bothers to comment that actually bothers to watch this. And let's see, FE, social harmony, caring about people getting along, and basically the group values over your own. So, and even though that's the way that is, you still have, for someone with FE first, you'll worry about not being authentic, worry about not being moral enough, but you'll still place value on social harmony over all that. And same thing with it being the second function, where it's an internal critic of your morals and the morals of others. And then there's the other judging functions, TE, practical solutions, figuring out ways to make things work, and explaining things in a way that makes sense as much as possible, which if I have TE as second, hopefully I am making sense. Sorry if I am bad at explaining things though. And TI is concerned about logical consistency and making frameworks work. So that's how that goes. And I've heard there's two different ways for the codes for the personality types, MBTI and Socionics. And MBTI has an outward looking view on the types. It has where the fourth letter is about which function type is most extroverted, which is most visible to others, while Socionics places that fourth letter on what's the primary types, whether it's perceiving or judging. So it makes more sense for looking at the person from within, but for the person without, though, you have, for an INTJ, external thinking, extroverted thinking is the function you would notice more, whereas for an INTP you notice NE more, brainstorming, creativity more so. Even though for an INTJ, introverted intuition is the highest function, or should be, if not going through so much trauma in life, I guess. And for an INTP, it's introverted thinking, which is the logical consistency. So that's what they're strongest at, even though it's not the most visible at times. So, yeah. And extroverts have the letters on the end the same order, though, because their strongest function is their extrovert function. But anyway, so I'm going to wrap that up, and now my phone's going to take 50,000 years to upload this. So, alright, take care and have a good day, everyone. Try not to go crazy.